Why are you here, Quinn? Huh. Why are you in the fallen genius arisen? You don't seem to be here for the same reason I am. Ryuk repeated seriously as Quinn sat upright in the steam while Ryuk playfully submerged within it. Well, I am here just like the rest, to be given a chance to join the Ascension Academy, he replied, as Ryuk clicked his tongue. Then why do you care about some ultimate top 10 geniuses? In fact, the existence of the ultimate top 10 geniuses actually disproves the rest of you geniuses. Ryuk stated with a bit of a snort. Why do you say that? Just look at the situation, Quinn. There are 60 of us, and only 10 people will be allowed into the academy. In this place, there are 10 most powerful geniuses that you all believe will take the 10 spots. Then let me ask, if there are already 10 ultimate geniuses that you all acknowledge and agree will win the top 10 spots and enter the academy, why are the remaining 50 of you still fighting at all? What? I mean, there's no chance of you winning against the top 10 ultimate geniuses, right? Then why are you still coming for training every day? You should sit in your dorm room, wait for the top 10 to win, and then pack your bags and go home, Ryuk stated, his words as cold and callous as ever, his expression deadpan. The exact look to knock some sense into someone. If you know, Quinn, that you'll never win the spot, then why are you fighting? Why are you even here? You should sign out. The existence of 10 geniuses, to me, is something stupid, and I feel the remaining 50 of the geniuses are even stupider. If you already acknowledge 10 people who you have no doubt will win, then what does that make you? A side character. You're here to be the main character, right? How was the ticket of a side character thrown into your hands? When did you lose sight of the main character goal? Quinn, were you not here to be in the top 10? When did you grow satisfied with being ranked 59? When did you become scared of offending some people who all started in the same position as you? The questions came like a flood, drowning Quinn in cold water. Let me tell you a secret, Quinn, Ryuk suddenly said as he rose from the water and walked towards Quinn. I am here to fight for one of the top 10 spots. I don't care who the current top 10 are. I don't care who is guaranteed to win. I'm here to secure a spot, not to be a fanboy. So, I'm not scared of the top 10 finding me out. In fact, I want them to find me out. I want my reputation to grow. I want my growth to send chills into their hearts. I want them to fear that I will come to take away what you all assign to be theirs, in cold blood. I have a reason for being here, Quinn. To me, all this running around and training after calls is not just a schedule. It's a plan to win the top 10. So why shouldn't I go all out and grow? Do you understand me now? Ryuk's words ended as he left Quinn's front and walked off. Everyone here treats you like trash, don't they, Quinn? Ryuk suddenly said as Quinn turned to look at him. Ryuk turned his side to him, his expression unreadable. All the geniuses here look down on you. They feel like you're unworthy or undeserving of even a speech from them. You're scared of leaving the door room open because you were once bullied at night, right? Ryuk said with a grin that shook Quinn's heart. Just how did you know? Everyone will treat trash like trash, Quinn. Everyone but me. I treat you like an equal because you really are an equal. You're trash, and I came from the trashiest place too. We're like brothers, Quinn. But eventually we'll part. Not because I hate you, but because I will stop being trash, and you will keep being trash because you have no reason to fight. You have potential, Quinn. When I look into your eyes, I sense something about you. The golden light in your eyes. There's something in it, like a power, hidden away, unexplored, something I can't find amongst the rest of the fallen. Somehow, I feel like all you need is a reason to let that power out. But you have become fine with being trash. Aren't you scared, Quinn? Anything you're scared of? Ryuk suddenly asked as Quinn shook his head. Don't think so? What about you? To lose the one who cared for you because you were too weak to hold them in your grasp. I am scared of that. In fact, it's my only fear. Ryuk mused loudly, as his hands squeezed tightly into his palms, before his eyes turned bitingly cold, and he relaxed them. Win or lose, Quinn, you don't actually care, do you? Ryuk asked, his voice echoing through the grotto where he soon disappeared from Quinn's gaze. Do I care? The question silently echoed after Ryuk's disappearance as Quinn looked silently at the rejuvenating pool beneath him. On it was his own reflection staring back at him, repeating Ryuk's words. All my life, I have been satisfied with being the side character. I don't know when I accepted to be that, but somehow, I'm absolutely fine with it. Fine with not being in the spotlight. But there is a loneliness here, Quinn mused as his hands reached for his heart. Somehow it feels so lonely here. Somehow this part of me hate being ignored, being bullied, being mocked. Somehow I hate it all so much. I feel disgust at myself at night. But it's only for the night. I'll be fine once it's the day. I'll put on my smiling face, and everything will be fine. Through it all though, Ryuk, I'm tired of it. This clownliness, I'm tired of it all. But that's the only way to survive, isn't it? I am simply not destined for the spotlight. I'm simply not, and neither are you, Ryuk. The top 10 are, and the rest are not. You'll come to understand one day, Ryuk, Quinn muttered downcastly as he looked at his reflection. I'm sure you'll come to understand. Congratulations. Host has gained a total of the following from the rejuvenating bath. 10 strength stat points, 5 agility stat points, and 10 stat points in endurance. The system notification flashed before Ryuk's face as he ordered, Activate Stats tab. Stats. Strength, 50. Agility, 40. Intelligence, 20. Charisma, 11. Endurance, 40. Mana, 20. Luck, null. Attribute points, 10. The points gained today were a lot less than yesterday. I have sped up in the tests, hoping to get injured enough to guarantee more stat points from the pool, but still. Ryuk noticed. The day prior, the stats he had gained from the pool averaged around 15 to 20 points, yet today it was only around 5 to 10. Host's body will eventually adapt to the strength granted through source energy, and will thereby earn fewer stat points as the host's body adapts to the energy. Unless the concentration of source energy is improved, something highly unlikely. The host's ability to gain stat points from the pool will eventually come to an end, at most a day or two from now. The system's voice explained as Ryuk nodded. Still, I'm satisfied. If I had to earn these points by completing quests and using attribute points, it would take me weeks at least to reach this level. This source energy is truly a blessing from the heavens. Without wasting any more time, Ryuk dismissed the panel and moved toward a bench by the street, sitting down with furrowed brows. Throughout the whole of yesterday, I didn't sleep at all. I cultivated through the night and finally gained my mana. Yet somehow I'm not tired at all. Instead, I feel filled with energy, Ryuk thought to himself as he clenched his fists. It wasn't just his strength that had improved. Ryuk felt absolutely changed, even in his senses and perception. The sound of the air blowing was not hazy but exceedingly clear, and even at a distance, Ryuk felt his eyes could see farther and clearer. It was as if he had gained a new ability that allowed him to focus on a distant object and make it appear as if it was right before his gaze. These improvements were substantial, and somehow, even when Ryuk felt he ought to be overwhelmed by the new experiences, he wasn't. I have sped up in the tests, hoping to get injured enough to guarantee more stat points from the pool. Somehow that worked, but now I'm making the geniuses very suspicious. Still, there is nothing I can do to prevent that if I hope to catch up at all. Ryuk thought with furrowed brows, placing both hands on his lap and folding them together, thinking deeper. There's still much to prepare for. Hey, system, activate my interface. Ryuk commanded, and immediately it appeared. System interface. Name, Ryuk Null. Class, Beast Tamer. Age, 16. Race, half null, half unknown. Cultivation stage, core stage, origin plane cultivation. Just as I guessed, I've broken through to the core stage of the origin plane cultivation. No wonder I felt more control over my Frost Veil skill, Ryuk thought to himself as he dismissed the system interface. But now there are a few problems. I can control the Ice Apex energy, but the only thing I can do is use Frost Veil for longer. I might be oozing with mana right now, but there still really isn't much I can do. My Frost Veil skill isn't an offensive one like Morgane's skill. At its pinnacle, it's more of an evasive skill. It slows down attacks while also making me less visible. It doesn't directly improve my power or speed, nor my defense. The only reason I managed to battle Morgane was because of my combat experience. Ryuk reflected with furrowed eyes. Ryuk might have been able to match Morgane, but he knew well it was because of his combat experience. He faced his first beasts with Uncle Bob exactly when he was 10. In fact, he had always wanted to fight mutated beasts and had wished for it as his 10th birthday gift. It was a bloody day for a birthday, but the point was, Ryuk had been battling for nearly 6 years now. While most beasts were killed off with his rusty knife, there were countless times when he lost his knife and had no choice but to fight with his bare hands. This is what allowed him to catch up to Morgane. I can fight, and I can fight really well, at least better than the fallen geniuses. But still, it's clear as day, I need to get an offensive skill. And I've also noticed, while the geniuses were able to cover themselves in their mana energy, I can't. I can't even call up my mana unless I want to activate Frost Veil. I thought I would be able to manipulate ice to some degree, but I can't do anything at all. It's like my mana is only accessible when I activate Frost Veil. Any other attempt and it stays locked away. Ryuk thought to himself with furrowed eyebrows. He had seen how the other Fallen could manipulate their apex energy, but Ryuk had noticed that he actually couldn't. Right now, with his hands to his face, he tried to cover his hand in apex energy, but Ryuk couldn't feel his mana stir at all. He only felt it once when he tried activating his skill. "There's something wrong, system," Ryuk called out, and the reply came promptly. The only reason why Host's mana will do nothing but activate the Frost Veil skill is because Host's Ice Apex energy isn't truly his. It was obtained not genetically, like the fallen geniuses, but as a shared element due to Host's bond with Isha. If Host wants to gain the ability to freely manipulate his ice energy like the fallen geniuses, Host needs to gain the ability of ice manipulation or frost manipulation from his contrate beast. Then Host will be able to easily control his mana to form a myriad of things he wishes. In short, Host needs to gain that ability from Isha, and Isha must first awaken that ability within itself. I'm afraid this is the only way for Host to gain true control of the Ice Apex energy. Somehow I understand that, when I awakened this Frost Veil, it was part of bonding with Isha. I never really gained an ability after my Primordial Gate opened, but it happened after I bonded with Isha. But there is still a problem. Even if Isha is capable of controlling ice, how do I obtain the ability? Simply wishing for it won't make it happen, will it? Ryuk asked. Obtaining abilities from pets is a very difficult task, Host. One of the ways is the contracted beast directly giving the host the ability, but in return it would itself lose that ability. This means that if Isha passes the ice manipulation ability to Host, then Host will possess the ability, but Isha itself wouldn't be able to activate it. This is not like the Frost Veil that Host inherited due to it being the first bonding. Isha too can use the Frost Veil, and may even use it better than Host because it's genetic to her. The second way is for Host's bond with Isha to increase. If Host gains enough affinity with Isha, then there are limitless possibilities for growth. At the peak of Host's bond with Isha, Host's soul and Isha's soul will eventually merge as one, and Host will find himself able to even fuse directly with Isha to become a single entity. In such a state, Host will be able to become a half-ice serpent, and all of Isha's skills and abilities will be under Host's control. But such a state is very difficult to reach. It requires a level of trust that is simply out of this world. How out of this world? Ryuk pressed on. If he could achieve such trust with Isha, then he would gain all the abilities of an ice serpent. That seemed like a one-way ticket out of all his troubles. Such a level of trust is incomprehensible, but Host must know it is beyond the boundaries of Apex energy rules. Achieving such a level of trust would be equivalent to breaking a primordial law of Apex unification. Host's imagination can't even begin to comprehend such a state, let alone try to achieve it. Even in 1,000 years to come, I still don't see the host achieving this state with Isha. The system's statement didn't need any more elaboration. In essence, it was something that was close to impossible. The third way for host to obtain a skill from Isha is for Isha to ascend to a new evolutionary state. Currently, host possesses one of those cards of ascension. Has host forgotten this quest? Main quest. Quest name. Pride of a Genius. Quest information. Access to win the Flamefocal's Genius Trial and fight for a spot to be one of the students admitted to the prestigious academy. Rewards. Plus 5 level-up cards. Plus 10,000 purchase points. Plus 5,000 EXP. 1 free evolutionary card for Isha. The last reward is what host needs. Once host uses the evolutionary card on Isha, Isha undergoes a transformation to a higher level of existence, and host is rewarded by being able to freely choose a single skill from Isha's array of skills. This gives the opportunity for host to choose Isha's frost skill without Isha losing the ability to host. I am afraid these are the only 3 ways for host to obtain an ability from Isha. I'm not close to achieving any of these 3 things. While I might want to be capable of frost manipulation, I'm not willing for Isha to lose it just because I want it. An ice serpent that can't even control ice? Then wouldn't Isha become a joke? Isha might be my pet, but I know well it's an entity of its own. I won't lower its potential. Actually, host can't even do that, even if he wishes to, the system said as if reading Ryuk's mind. It is impossible for host to make Isha pass her own ability to host. No matter how powerful or strong the host is, Isha will always hold that choice. And right now, even Isha has no idea of that, nor does she even know of that possibility. So that probability is close to nil. The system explained, and Ryuk nodded. He also didn't want such a possibility, so he wasn't bothered by its existence. The second way to get the skill is the hardest. I don't know what level of trust is required between me and Isha, but if the system said I won't be achieving that in 1,000 years from now, then it won't be anything I will achieve in a month before the test. But the last choice, that will only come after I pass the test, not before. There is no chance of me getting that for the fight for the test. In the end, it's not really useful to my current predicament, Ryuk analyzed as he collapsed on his back. It seemed he would be stuck like this for a while at least. Actually, host is getting everything pretty wrong, the system stated, and Ryuk raised an eyebrow. I'm getting everything wrong? What do you mean? Host's special power is beast taming. That is taming beasts and making them fight for host. A beast tamer doesn't really need his own strength, just like how a summoner doesn't rely on his own strength. A beast tamer's strength is dependent on the power of his beasts, the same as a summoner's strength being based on how powerful his summons are. Acquiring a skill from the beast is just an added boon. Host seems to be trying to turn that into the mainstream. Doesn't host understand that Frost Veil is the best of skills that host could awaken? A beast tamer will never be caught throwing punches at the enemy. That is the work of his beast, not him. Host's true power as a beast tamer is not the ability host awakens. It is Isha herself, the system said as Ryuk sat up. A beast tamer's job is to let the beast do the fighting, and all the beast tamer needs to do is not get in the way. That means the most important attribute of a beast tamer is his ability to evade. The beast tamer stays at the back, and the beast fights at the front. Sometimes, unfortunate situations happen, and the beast tamer simply needs to make sure he doesn't die or get wounded. Actually, does host know a secret about Isha? The system suddenly asked. What is that? Ryuk replied. The truth is, any beast that bonds with host is immortal. What? Isha can't die, host. When Isha comes out of the pet world, of course, it's its main body. But there is a fragment of her soul present in host's soul itself. If Isha's body is completely destroyed or crushed to nothing, there will still be a fragment of power within host's soul, and it only requires a few resources to bring Isha back to life once more. In fact, some absolute beast tamers can endlessly summon their beasts back even after their deaths. This means the beast will keep coming back, again and again, even after being reduced to pieces. This is what is terrifying about beast tamers. When a beast fights alongside a beast tamer against a mortal enemy, the enemy strike viciously at the beast, and might even injure it severely before its eventual death. But what if the beast tamer simply summons it back a second later? The beast is now back to its initial fighting prowess, but what of the enemy? He is still gravely injured and unwell. Then who will eventually win that fight, host? The system asked. Ryuk didn't even need to think about it. So, the beast tamer can just simply summon the beast again and again, endlessly wearing down even the strongest opponents. Ryuk thought. Host gets the gist of it. This is just one of the powers of a beast tamer. But there is also a great downfall. Most are already aware that fighting a beast tamer summon is a foolish endeavor because the beast is immortal. And if the beast tamer is strong enough, he would just keep summoning it back again and again. Then the cultivator will be stuck fighting an immortal opponent until when? The end of time. So there is an unspoken rule for defeating a beast tamer. And what is that? Ignore the beast and kill the beast tamer. The absolute downside to Isha being immortal is this. The second host dies, the beast dies instantly too, the system stated, sending a pang through Ryuk's heart. It doesn't matter how many beasts a beast tamer gathers or how powerful his beasts are. Kill the beast tamer, and the beasts follow after him in death. While there have been exceptions of some beasts being able to avoid dying with their master, in most cases, the beasts can't even fight after their master's death. They run away as their soul is damaged with their master's demise. So, for your enemy to defeat you, they simply need to kill you. This is where a beast tamer's shared skills come in. Host Awakened Frostveil, a technique that slows down all attacks, physical or elemental, and makes Host almost invisible for as long as it's active. This is literally the best skill a beast tamer can obtain. Since a beast tamer lacks his own offensive skills and would be targeted by enemies, the best thing Host needs is a defensive skill that blocks attacks or even better, an evasive skill that ensures the attacks never reach Host in the first place. Host managed to awaken an evasive skill. If Host is able to slow down enemy attacks and also go invisible, Host only needs to bide his time and wait for his beast to wear down the opponent. Something that is inevitable if nothing is done to Host. In essence, a beast tamer is never an offensive figure on his own. He is usually a person whose defense is almost unbreakable or who is very good at avoiding others and staying far away from the battle. In short, the beast tamer is a cunning figure, or to be blunt, a coward who stays far away from the battle and tries not to get involved as much as possible. Host, to me, seems to be ignoring Isha's power and depending on your personal ability. While this is no doubt a good behavior, Host who wishes to grow strong and uses his own fists and legs to steal his battles, this is actually not the wisest decision. Host's focus should be on growing the beast's strength and improving his defensive or evasive skills, not improving his punching power. All will end once Host dies. For Host to punch, he must allow the enemy to close in, and that is very risky as one misstep could cause a beast tamer to lose all his beasts and his own life. And there is something the system has been quiet about but would like to bring to Host's attention right now. The system suddenly said as Ryuk's eyes flashed. And what is that? Host calls himself a beast tamer. But Host doesn't even know yet what Isha can do. What does Host think Isha is? A cuddle partner? The system asked, absolute disdain and mockery in its voice as Ryuk was stopped cold. The way Host is treating Isha is very stupid to the system, especially after Isha has evolved away from its infant stage into a semi-adult stage. Isha is now an ice python, and not just any ordinary ice python. Isha's bloodline is out of this world. Host. Right now, the system predicts that Isha's power is at least that of a D-grade beast and even stepping into the boundary of a C-grade beast. What? Host's focus on his personal strength is making him ignore the true power that he possesses. Isha doesn't need cuddling, Host. It needs to be trained. That is what a beast tamer is all about. Training the beast. Host seems to be trying to grow stronger to protect Isha, something that is contrary to what a beast tamer should do. Also Host, to me, seems to have no plans for Isha at all. and I'm just wondering why that is. Does Host wish for it to do nothing but sit in the pet world all day long? Host must know that Isha's thirst for battles and strength is innately thousands of times stronger than that of Host. Isha is not a cuddle snake. It is a battle pet, born for chaos and destruction. So, my advice is for Host to cut at least 70% of his attention and focus it on Isha. If Host does this, his chance of passing the coming test increases by 30%. The path of the beast tamer. It seems like a really strong path, and my worldview formerly did not match it. Ryuk began with a faint whisper as he looked up at the sky, the shining stars, and the blinding white moon. The twilight seemed even more relaxing than he had ever seen it. I don't want to turn Isha into a cuddle buddy, nor do I expect Isha to be a cuddle buddy. I know it is a mutated beast, and a very powerful one. I could feel it the second the egg was passed into my arms. But somehow, system, I don't agree. Somehow, I don't like this path. The beast tamer path. To stand behind and let Isha fight at the front. That is not just me. Uncle Bob has never hunted a beast with me before. Not even when I just started hunting the mutated beasts. I have always learned to hunt them alone. To corner them alone. To fight them alone. I bear the wounds of my own battles. No one carries them for me. But now, this path, this new game, is best played with me sitting at the back and letting the beast fight for me? To make the beast protect me? Uncle Bob said Isha was a gift from my mother. I've always wondered, just what did she want me to do with it? I have found myself an answer on Isha's birth. I'll raise Isha, not like a pet, but like a sister, a blood sister. I'll never release it to go fighting at the front while I stay at the back. Host, I am afraid you will go astray if such a path is followed. The system said as Ryuk's hands folded within his lap. Let me ask you something too? What is that, Host? You were created by my uncle, weren't you? This beast taming aspect of it was also from my uncle, isn't it? That is correct. All my life, my uncle has raised me to be an independent fighter. And now that I think about it, he must have also been working on you when I was out hunting beasts. I have once partnered with others to try and hunt beasts, but my uncle had frowned at that. Not that he hated the people I partnered with, and more of him hating my action of thinking I needed a partner. Somehow, Uncle Bob himself had tried to make me a very good fighter. Yet you tell me he made me this system and this class that required me to do nothing but sit at the sidelines? For a person who has emphasized me fighting alone all my life and needing no help, you think he would suddenly create a system for me to stop fighting and start relying on beasts to do so? That just doesn't sound like Uncle Bob at all. Ryuk mused to the system, which remained absolutely silent. So somehow, I am sure Uncle Bob still expects me to fight. All beast tamers have a very solid weakness, which is that they aren't really capable of personal battle. This is a very fatal mistake, and now I see why Uncle Bob had made me fight all alone. Uncle Bob wanted me to be the perfect beast tamer. Beast tamers feel like their strength is their beasts, but I'm different. I refuse your path, system. I won't hide at the back, simply learning how to use my evading skills to avoid trouble while Isha fights. That's a cowardly path. It must have been fine for all the beast tamers out there, but unfortunately, I wasn't raised like that. If beast taming is all about me hiding away and Isha fighting, if somehow such disgusting cowardice is what you refer to as cunning, then I spit on beast taming as a class. I'll choose the path of Uncle Bob. I may have thousands of contracted beasts, and they can all be strong, but never will you find me at the back, system. Never will you find me being so dependent and personally weak myself. I will always stand at the front first. I will be stronger than all of my beasts combined. I'll be the final boss for my enemy to fight against, not the other way around. The beasts are my companions. They can help me. But still, I will be the lone warrior at the end of it all. I will follow your advice, system. I will train Isha and make it stronger. I'll evolve it until it reaches its apex evolution state and grow it into a scary powerhouse. But still, I will also train myself to become the absolute terror at the end of it all. Ryuk stated, rising to his feet as a fearsome aura began sweeping all around him, a strange energy pulsating out of his body. His snow-white hair began lifting around his head, flapping as if gravity no longer existed, and Tay blue in his eyes began pulsating with a blue energy. Strangely, cracks began spreading out from his feet, the ground shuddering as if unable to bear the pure, powerful, condensed aura gushing out of Ryuk's body. Instantly, a notification flashed before Ryuk's gaze. Congratulations. Host has undergone a change of class. Host has gained a new SSS grade class. Host is no longer a beast tamer. Host is now a beast sovereign. Host has gained a new skill. Would Host like to check it out? The system notification somehow brought Ryuk back to life as he slowly stepped away from the cracks that he had caused on the ground. His resolve had been so strong that he had succeeded in ultimately forcing the system to change his class from a beast tamer to a beast sovereign. And now he had even gained new skills from his class. Yes. Skills and abilities. 1. King's Aura, Level 1. Description. The user exudes an aura that bolsters his beast's strength and morale, increasing their attack power by 50% while weakening the resolve of the enemies within range of himself. Extra benefit. Other beasts will naturally gravitate toward Host, making wild creatures more likely to submit and join Host's cause. Immediately Ryuk cited the name of the skill. He already knew what it was all about. Since he had become a beast sovereign, he had gained an aura that enhanced his beast's strength by almost double and also struck fear into his opponent's hearts. It might just be the thing that would help him well if used properly. But from the discussion with the system, Ryuk could say he had gained something better than the class change, and that was resolve and a unique perspective. Now that he had chosen the type of path he wanted to walk on, he could easily begin maximizing his training. I can create a schedule in my head and include Isha too, he thought. From 7 in the morning, I'll go for class training. Running around and climbing a mountain won't do much for Isha, who is a beast anyway, and I don't think it's even allowed, so I won't allow Isha to join it. But once the test finishes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll go to the training room. That is when I will release Isha. I'll not only train myself but train Isha too. Today we finished earlier due to the 6 hours, and I've sat here for close to 30 minutes now. The time should currently be 1:30. I'll start walking to the training room, and then Isha and I will begin our training at 2 o'clock. That is how I will maximize it, Ryuk thought as he turned a corner and began walking straight to the training hall. With a clear goal and a unique perspective in his mind, it was time to start acting and keep growing. Ascension Academy. You just wait for me, Ryuk thought as he jogged forward towards the training room. 19 days later. Bomoom. Bomoom. Ba-ah-wah-wing. Bomoom. A fearsome energy wave continuously bubbled out from a closed door, its noise loud enough to cause some of the geniuses to raise their eyebrows. 2 students happened to pass by the door and couldn't help but mutter. Most likely one of the top 10 ultimate geniuses. Their powers are no doubt beyond this world, the second genius said as they scurried away. Inside the training room, vroom, white humanoid robots of close to 30 in number flashed around the area with incredible speed, laser beams flashing through the area with even more speed, and rippling out destructive energy waves. Their opponent, none other than a white-haired boy who weaved through them like a ghost. Occasionally, his punches erupted forth with power, smashing the robots into absolute bits. Bomoom! A powerful shockwave exploded right by Ryuk's side as he dodged it by tilting his head. His fist shot forward with speed, tearing through the robot's armored body and extracting its core. Instantly, boom! A powerful beam of energy erupted from one of the robots, a laser beam shooting out from its chest where a glowing core could be seen implanted. Ryuk managed to avoid the beam of energy, and in the next instant, a smirk appeared at the corner of his lips. Before he could finish his words, an ice crystal materialized out of thin air, emitting a terrifying amount of cold energy. It reached about 2 meters in pure length before piercing forward at high speed, rotating like a drill. The robot that had just fired its laser beam instantly had the rotating crystal embed itself into its chest. Unluckily, 5 other robots standing behind it were also caught in its path, their cores nailed to the wall, instantly ending their functionality. Around Ryuk's left arm was none other than a python, which slowly closed its maw, oozing with ice energy, a dangerous blue light flashing in its eyes. In the next instant, all the robots began closing in with speed, surrounding Ryuk from all sides, attempting to corner him. Some floated into the air, laser beams blasting forth from their chest and piecing forth towards Ryuk and Isha. Ryuk slowly raised his right hand, the arm where Isha was coiled, and then he smiled. In the next moment, the runes on Ryuk's arm began glowing, with Isha's form embedded within the runes. Suddenly, powerful cold energy emanated from both Isha and Ryuk, turning the world around them into a domain of ice and snow. Mist spread from beneath Ryuk's feet, blowing toward the robots and drastically slowing down all their movements, until the robots appeared to be taking only 1 step per second, and the beams in the air piercing towards Ryuk halted. It was like time had stopped in the room. In that same instant, a powerful snake screech resounded through the frozen world. Rotating ice shrapnel began appearing all around Ryuk's raised hand. They were about 20 of these pin-like shrapnel pieces. Instantly, they began spinning with ferocious speed before shooting outward. Boom! 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 The scene transformed into utter chaos. The rotating shrapnel tore straight into the cores of the robots. In less than a minute, the room shifted into silence as every single robot collapsed to its knees, slamming hard into the frozen ground. In less than 10 minutes, all 40 robots present in the room were crushed to pieces, their cores shattered, and their metallic parts scattered across the walls, a testament to the utter devastation wrought by Ryuk and Isha. Host has killed a total of 40 robots and gained a total of 2,000 EXP. Total EXP, 3,400/4,000. A breath of cold air escaped Ryuk's lips before he turned his attention to Isha, who slowly closed its maw and rubbed its head gently against his hand. Your accuracy and power have increased a lot, Isha. You're the strong one. Right now, Ryuk had reached an unprecedented fusion with Isha. Before he could even say anything, Isha seems to be able to read his mind and adapt to his battle, and during these past few days, Ryuk had noticed a lot of things about Isha and himself. For firstly, Ryuk could share his mana with Isha and also share Isha's mana. It was how he had turned the training room to a world of ice and snow. By combining his mana with Isha's mana, something Ryuk could make possible with Isha covering the snake runes around his arm. Ryuk was successfully able to use the skill, Frost Veil, to slow down the robots and almost fully pause their beams of energy. Isha also used the opportunity and timing to activate its own special skill, Frost Manipulation, to create ice shrapnel, and borrowing a little more mana from Ryuk increased their numbers and one-shot all of the robots. All of this was achieved without Ryuk even needing to complete a single sentence, and so fast it took just a few minutes to easily eradicate 40 robots easily beyond the plane of origin. About cultivation, I have been a little stuck on advancing for a while now. Ryuk mused silently as 2 polar essence cubes appeared in his hands, and Isha's eyes flashed. With speed, it opened its maw wide and devoured the ice cubes, giving a satisfied hiss before disappearing into the primordial gate. Raising his hands, a holographic panel appeared in Ryuk's line of vision, and quickly, he began typing onto the board. Not long after, the various broken robot parts started disappearing back into the walls. The room became sparkling clean once more. Activate System Interface, Ryuk ordered. System Interface. Name, Ryuk Null. Class, Beast Sovereign. Age, 16. Race, half null, half unknown. Cultivation stage, Perfection stage, Origin Plane Cultivation. 10 days after his class change, Ryuk had been able to advance to the core stage of the Plane of Origin, and just 5 days later, he moved to the peak of the stage. But never would Ryuk have expected that, just 3 days after, he would reach the fabled Perfection stage. With his bonding with Isha, Ryuk's comprehension of the Frost Veil ability had massively increased. Its effects had evolved from previously allowing him to slow down opponents and reduce visibility around him to completely turning the world into ice. He could stop opponents entirely, pausing even beams of light around him, forcing them to freeze. Just as the Apex Codex had mentioned, once a cultivator reached the perfection stage, they would naturally undergo an evolutionary change in their awakened skills. His Frost Veil technique had undergone considerable differences, and even Ryuk's strength had been enhanced so much he had even been able to punch through robots at the initial plane of ascension with relative ease and pause their laser beams completely. Right now, his power rivaled that of an initial plane of ascension cultivator, even though he was only a perfectionate origin plane cultivator. But then the problem came when the system informed him that he wouldn't automatically move up to the plane of ascension. Unlike his previous natural progression, entering a new realm of cultivation required conscious effort, like opening the primordial gate. In this case, Ryuk would need to form the apex realm to successfully ascend. That was where the problem lay. He had no idea how to form the apex realm. He couldn't remember the Apex Codex ever mentioning the process. Not that he could even recheck, as he had returned the book to Duke the Lion. Just how? I need to find a way, Ryuk mused to himself. Worthy of mention is that now that he had reached the perfection stage of the origin plane cultivation, he could finally see the cultivation stages of the fallen geniuses, something he had only barely sensed before. He could easily see that the majority of the fallen geniuses were actually at the initial plane of ascension stage. None were still at the plane of origin, not even Quinn himself, the 59th ranked. All of them were in the plane of ascension, though their powers vastly differed due to awakened abilities and training. Ryuk had noticed that the majority of the geniuses were just like Quinn, choosing to give up and losing all hope due to the existence of the 10 ultimate geniuses. Some, however, still secretly held hope in their hearts. These were the ones filling up the rankings and competing for higher positions. Still, Ryuk knew his strength wasn't enough. The top 10 ultimate geniuses were all at the core stage of the plane of ascension, and some were rumored to be at the peak of that stage, just one step away from reaching the plane of dominion. Ryuk knew well that even if he went all out, he would only be able to battle fallen geniuses at the initial plane of ascension. If he joined forces with Isha, they might be able to defeat a genius at the core stage of the plane of ascension, or at least not lose outright. But the peak of the stage? He knew well how vast the difference in power was when he was in the initial stage of origin compared to the ultimate peak of it. The gap was as wide as the heavens. There was no way he would be making that leap in strength. And right now, there were only 10 days left before the test began. To improve his chances of earning a top 10 spot, Ryuk would need to reach at least the core stage of the plane of ascension and fight together with Isha. Only then might he have a hope of defeating a fallen genius at the peak of the stage. He couldn't even say he was 100% sure because, up until now, Ryuk still hadn't laid eyes on a single ultimate top 10 genius. It was as though they were all in hiding. But to be fair, he barely saw any other geniuses due to his strict schedule of class, training room, and cultivation room. He had also stopped receiving the stats boost from the rejuvenation energy around 15 days ago. Close to that point, he barely received any stats at all, even during the last days, but he had managed to level up several times and distributed his stats with attribute points. Now, his level and stats looked something like this. Due to the upcoming test, Ryuk had been incredibly stringent with his points. From the advice he had gotten from Morgaine, the test would be all about battle strength, so Ryuk tried improving his stats in areas that would best help with combat. This made his intelligence and charisma lag behind significantly since he never placed any stat points into them. His intelligence wouldn't help much in battling the brute strength of the fallen geniuses, and his charisma only affected beasts wanting to bond with him, not other races. It wasn't efficient to put points into those areas, so he focused on his combat-related stats instead. Yet somehow, Ryuk hated his intelligence being so low. Felt like a mocking stain on him. Tsh, I can't wait for the test to just be over. Ryuk was thinking when suddenly, a loud bell sound rang throughout the training room he was in as he raised his head towards the walls, wondering just what was causing the sound. Did I go too far with wrecking up the robots? He was about to summon the room's holographic panel to check if he had messed something up somehow when an announcement quickly came through. Classes for tomorrow have been cancelled. All geniuses are to gather at venue number 3 of the Assembling Arisen Hall tomorrow at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. Ignore this message at your own peril. Classes for tomorrow have been cancelled. All geniuses are to gather at venue number 3 of the Assembling Arisen Hall tomorrow at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. Ignore this message at your own peril. Classes for tomorrow have been cancelled. All geniuses are to gather at venue number 3 of the Assembling Arisen Hall tomorrow at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. Ignore this message at your own peril. The announcement repeated 3 times before coming to a stop, and Ryuk's eyes narrowed. Don't tell me it's about to begin already. But there are still 10 days left. He mused doubtfully. Not feeling a need to remain here, he wore back his shirt and exited the training room. The place was silent, with everybody having left already. Ryuk was usually the last person to leave due to his intense training. He would train first to avoid his skills lagging behind, then train once more with Isha, making him spend more time than usual. Finally, he exited the building and made his way toward the dorm room. Do you think the test is finally beginning? I thought it would only begin at the end of the month. Does the 20th of the month count as the end of the month? Who cares? We already know who will be getting accepted anyway. As Ryuk walked through the dormitory halls, there were a lot of geniuses outside their dorm rooms, conversing and chatting, even though it was already nighttime. Somehow, the dorms felt livelier than ever, and soon Ryuk arrived at his own dorm room. Knock! Knock! Before he could deliver the third knock, the door opened, and he stepped inside, finding the familiar golden-haired boy with spectacles. Seems like someone memorized my entrance timing. Ryuk mused as Quinn grinned and stepped to the side, allowing Ryuk's entrance before shutting the door tightly. Your time of leaving the room and arriving has been easy to guess these past few days. As much as that's good for me to know, you do have to be very careful. Others can take hold of this information, you know? Quinn said, as Ryuk shook his head helplessly before nodding with a smirk. Of course, Mr. Paranoia. Stop calling me that. And for the billionth time, I'm not paranoid. I'm just a man who believes in safety and values the dignity of life. You won't become one of the ultimate 10 if you end up dead. Will you? Quinn said as he went back to his seat, rubbed his glasses with a tiny cloth, and put them back on before diving into an open book he seemed to have been reading previously. If there was one thing Ryuk had noticed about Quinn in the past few days, it was that the boy was a nerd. If he wasn't sleeping, he would be reading. Ryuk had once been curious about what he was so engrossed in and had tried to see for himself, but he'd been disappointed and stood up less than 3 minutes later. One could say the books just weren't his type. Speaking of the ultimate 10 geniuses, have you seen them before? Ryuk asked as he took off his shirt and placed it into the dirty clothes basket before heading into the bathroom. Is this about the announcement earlier? Quinn asked, staring at the bathroom door. Partly. And it wouldn't kill to be a nerdy paranoid for a few minutes, would it? Ryuk asked, making Quinn roll his eyes, but they soon regained their clarity. The ultimate 10 geniuses, huh? The only person I can imagine not knowing anything about them is a training maniac like you, Quinn said, not forgetting to rub it in, as Ryuk's eyes dropped under the shower. Dumb nerd, he thought as he kept washing his hair with shampoo. The top 10 geniuses are not just special because of their power, but actually because of their family background. Family background? Ryuk asked. Yes, we Fallens are not equal. Some backgrounds have purer bloodlines than others. We usually call them the 12 Lost. These 12 Lost are the strongest of the entire Fallen race. To you humans, they're more like surnames, or better yet, like the 10 strongest races in Grade B. There are also 12 Losts who are the strongest among the entire Fallen race. They are not just superior in strength but also in their abilities being higher ranked, and the purity of their mana being at an otherworldly level. Meeting a Fallen from the 12 Lost is already something incredibly rare. So much so that some Fallens shed tears even at the sight of one in their lifetime and consider it a blessing. All of the top 10 geniuses are from the 12 Lost in one way or another, Quinn said as the shower from the bathroom quieted down and footsteps approached. Soon, Ryuk came out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his head and hair. The ultimate 10 geniuses, the 12 Lost. Now I feel more interested in knowing more about you Fallens, he said, his eyes shining with a wanting light that made Quinn raise an eyebrow. He had never seen Ryuk this excited to know something at all, and he couldn't help but close his book as he prepared to satisfy all of his curiosities. You know, nobody knows, but I've been secretly tracking their movements for a month now and keeping tabs on all I can learn about them. Want to know what I've found out? Quinn said in a whisper as Ryuk's eyes shone even more, and he bent down, his ear tingling. Of course I do. Well then, if you really want to know, get on your knees and call me Daddy. What? Ryuk asked with a raised brow, as Quinn gave him a wicked smile. You know what? Forget about it. I'll be seeing them all tomorrow anyway, Ryuk said, waving Quinn off as the boy burst into loud laughter, pointing mockingly at Ryuk. Just like I expected. Gosh, you're so predictable. You do know your predictability will lead you to your grave one day, right? Quinn said as Ryuk thought. More of my damn greed. Okay, I'll tell you about them, Quinn continued. Starting from the 10th on the list, a guy called Aerith Selim. He is from the lost family of Midnight Spire. According to rumors I've heard about the Midnight Spire family, it is said that they are all capable of short-range teleportation and spatial manipulation. Quinn said as Ryuk paused before turning to look at Quinn dumbfoundedly. Teleportation. Yes, teleportation. If Aerith is from that family, then he should, no doubt, be able to disappear and reappear instantly at least. That power alone is enough to make him overwhelm most of the other geniuses. The 9th on the list is Silva Thorn. The lost family of Verdant Thorn are known for their ability to control plants to entangle, heal, or crush their enemies. As for Silva herself, she can make trees grow instantly, and some say she can create vines thick enough to lift her opponents up into the air, Quinn said with amazement in his eyes. But still, that is nothing compared to Thaddeus Thunderclap of the lost family of Thunderclap Requiem. The Thunderclap family are an abnormal fallen family with the special ability of summoning lightning storms to enhance their strikes, and their speed is said to be unmatched, even by lightning. I've heard a rumor of Thaddeus having once summoned lightning before in a storm, but I can't really say for sure. Still, lightning is a rare and ferocious element, Quinn replied, and Ryuk made sure to keep a mental note on that. The 7th on the list is a burly guy called Garrick Might. The lost family of Iron Might are the only fallen family who are respected even by the Titans themselves, because they have an ability called Titan Endurance. Their ability grants them immense physical strength and durability, making them nearly impossible to hurt. As for Garrick, everyone nicknames him the Bull, because he can easily smash through walls with his fist, and it was said that he doesn't even open doors. He just walks through them like nothing. A bull indeed, Ryuk stated with a chuckle. Somehow, he found Garrick more amusing than the rest. You won't be laughing when you see him though, he's almost no different from a Titan, Quinn said seriously, not sharing Ryuk's amusement. The 6th on the list is a weird guy called Darius Crescent, of the lost family of Phantom Crescent. The Phantom Crescent family are a very scary and abnormal group. They have the commonly known ability of spectral blades. Rumors say that they are born with those blades, which can easily pass through solid objects and cut through energy and spirit directly. There is a saying that goes, the more armor around you, the easier your death becomes when you face a Phantom Crescent. Garrick himself is a sadistic fallen known to be extremely brutal in battle, cutting up his opponents for fun. Somehow, he is the most feared ultimate genius due to his sadistic and vile nature, Quinn said, and Ryuk couldn't help but notice the hair at the back of Quinn's neck rising. A guy with blades that can pass through solid objects? That can be a little problematic, Ryuk thought to himself. The 5th person is a lady, and her name is Lucinda Crimson. Most of us call her Lady Blood. Lady Blood? That's a weird nickname, Ryuk said. Only if he knew how ridiculous his own nickname was. The Crimson Veil family's ability is called Blood Dominion. The Crimsons can control their own blood, or the blood of their enemies, to attack and even form powerful weapons. As for Lucinda, it is rumored that she can turn her blood into swords, weaken her enemies by draining their blood, and use it to power herself up. But even though she has such a scary ability, she is actually nice looking up close and very gentle. I've seen her once, and she didn't seem so bad. Well, definitely not as bad as your Lady Satisfia, Ryuk said in a mocking tone. Lady Satisfy isn't a bad person. I would say she just loves reading her book undisturbed. That's the only reason she ignores me. She talks to me anytime she's not doing anything, Quinn defended as Ryuk chuckled while slipping into bed. Of course, of course. Humph. You'll see it for yourself one day. So wait, what number was I? Quinn asked, forgetting which genius he last called. You'll be moving to number 4 next, Ryuk replied. Right. Number 4 is a guy called Alaric Glacial. He's from the lost family of Frozen Shard, who are all known for their ability to freeze entire battlefields and create ice weapons that never break. As for Alaric himself, not much is known about him, as he is usually very cold to others, just like his family name. But I've heard he once fought with another genius and froze him completely within seconds, stopping him from moving. His ice ability really is terrifying and unrivaled. Will be a perfect match, Ryuk thought to himself. He felt more than interested in a guy who could control ice, just like his pet Isha. That is all, Quinn said, stopping as he picked up his book and kept reading. What? There are still 3 more. Ryuk protested as Quinn shook his head. True, but I don't know anything about them or their hierarchy. Only the top 10 know anything about the top 3. The only thing I know are their names. And what is that? Calidor Whale, Ignatius Blade, and Morgaine Dominaire. Those are the 3, and they are the most powerful geniuses of all. Morgaine Dominaire. Could she be the one? The thought echoed through Ryuk's mind. Long after it was well into the dark of night and the entire dorm area became grave silent. Ryuk still found himself unable to sleep at all. Somehow, his thoughts kept drifting back to the abilities of the ultimate geniuses, with various scenarios of them using their abilities and how he would be able to solo them. But even more, he was curious about the top 3. The name of Morgaine seemed familiar, and Ryuk could easily bet his arm that it would be that girl he had first trained with. Even though he had received the request of training from her, Ryuk had only trained with her that one time. He never went to her training area after that. He was already aware of her ability, and fighting her at just 10% of her true strength seemed like a waste of his energy. It would be much better if he focused on improving his own abilities, and even up till now, nobody knew of the existence of Isha, his pet. He still didn't reveal Isha to anyone at all, nor did he reveal his Frost Veil technique. If he had kept training with Morgaine, his chances of vastly improving his own strength would have been limited, and he wouldn't have been able to improve his coordination with Isha or properly train Isha, since he didn't want to reveal her existence. For that reason, he had only trained with Morgaine that day and never saw her at all after that. Still, it surprised him to realize she might perhaps be one of the top 3 geniuses. But he somehow felt he need not be shocked. Morgaine's ability, even at just 10%, was already overwhelmingly powerful and fully offensive. If she activated her ability, her power and strikes could keep increasing by the second until it overwhelmed her opponent completely. How to stop or overcome such an ability, Ryuk wasn't well aware, but he knew it would be difficult to stop if Morgaine activated it while going at 100% power level. That leaves just the 2, Calidor Whale and Ignatius Blade, Ryuk thought. His focus was entirely on the top ultimate geniuses. Ryuk knew well that if he were ever to gain a spot in the Ascension Academy, his major stumbling blocks would no doubt be those top 10 who every genius had already determined in their hearts to be impossible to defeat. Knowing of their skills earlier than normal was something that would greatly help Ryuk. He was already aware of what little they were at least capable of, but they had no idea about him at all. With Ryuk purposefully not challenging any other genius for a change of room, he was still the 60th ranked genius. Only those ranked 50 to 59, the ones Ryuk trained with and all placed under Sir Kirin, were well aware of Ryuk's increase in strength. Rumors might have spread, but that was all they were, rumors. The top 10 ultimate geniuses wouldn't be interested in him at all, and Ryuk would more than love to keep things that way, contrary to what he told Quinn before. I can decide to be naive and tell myself the announcement is just nothing but that, an announcement. But I know well, the test has already begun for sure. Somehow, I will have to fight my way through the hierarchy starting tomorrow. Limiting myself anymore will be nothing but negative and will backfire. I will have to go all out from tomorrow onwards. Ryuk thought, unknowingly squeezing his hand tightly into a fist, but was brought out of his own thoughts when he heard the call. Ryuk! You asleep? Quinn's whisper rang out, and Ryuk replied. No. I have to say you arrived home quickly today, and not oozing with ice. You must have skipped cultivation today. Why? Because of the announcement? Quinn asked, and Ryuk shrugged in response. Maybe. Hehe. You still planning on securing a spot in that Ascension Academy? Quinn said in his same mocking tone, and Ryuk shook his head. Wouldn't hurt to at least give it a chance. Who knows, maybe the test would give everybody a fair chance and not be determined by just strength. Perhaps, it would be determined by how nerdily paranoid a genius can be. Ryuk replied in his own tone of mockery too, causing a loud snort to echo through the room. It won't be on that, not even in your dreams. Quinn replied, earning nothing but a satisfied grin from Ryuk. His words had hit the mark, just how he liked it. Silence followed for a few seconds before, eventually, Quinn broke it once more. I'm curious though, when you came in, it was said that you were recommended by the half-fallen one. How did you come about her in the first place? Quinn asked as Ryuk buried himself in his bed, trying to force himself to sleep. It's a long story. Oh, and what would happen if you failed her? What? Ryuk asked as he forced open one eye. I mean, you are here based on her command rights, meaning somehow she must have expected you to pass, something you won't. No one can top the 10 ultimate geniuses. So what will happen after your loss? Like, what's your backup plan? Quinn asked as Ryuk looked blankly at his own feet, silence extending in the room for a minute. A backup plan? Now that he mentions it, it makes so much sense. I have been so focused on getting a spot that I forgot to even ask myself just what I would do if I ended up failing. A backup plan, huh? Ryuk thought, and soon his eyes regained their clarity. Would you believe me if I said I don't have one? He asked in return, as loud laughter rang throughout the room, coming from none other than Quinn. Somehow, I feel like I already know you won't have one. So predictable once more. What about you though, Quinn? Huh? What's your backup plan? Don't tell me you don't have one. The last thing I would believe in this world is a nerdy paranoia not having a backup plan. Ryuk said with a chuckle after he received prolonged silence. Of course, I already have one. My backup plan is really simple. So simple, you may even laugh at me, he stated as Ryuk chuckled. Tell me. I will go sign up at the school association, Quinn stated. And what is that? Ryuk couldn't help but ask. It's like an organization where you can sign up to teach young Fallens. You want to be a teacher? If you weren't a nerdy paranoia, I would have laughed. But you seem perfect for the job, based on how many hours you spend in a day reading, Ryuk stated, causing quite a bit of surprise to Quinn. Anyone he had told of his plan had laughed and mocked him, and he had eventually kept quiet and never told anyone about it. It was surprising to see Ryuk be an exception and even provide a reasonable explanation for his agreement. It was surprising, to say the least. I plan on joining the school just for some time, to gather up some money. Then I'll start a company, a bar or eatery, something like that. A nice way to live life on easy mode while also serving and being of use to the Fallen community. Kinda a sweet backup clan. Right? I have an offer for you. You can be a personal manager in my... Don't even think about it, Ryuk said, cutting him off. Hehe, I'm pretty sure you'll change your mind soon anyway. Just gotta bide my time. Quinn said with a bit of sadistic glee before he also drove deeper into the comfort of his bed, preparing to sleep. Finally, silence settled onto the room as Ryuk's eyes looked at the blank white wall before him. I really can't afford to lose. That was Ryuk's last thought before his eyes eventually shut close, and he drifted off to sleep. An hour later, a python appeared around Ryuk, snuggling into his chest and also drifting off to sleep. The Assembly Arisen Hall was otherworldly loud for the day. Various fallen geniuses could be seen all around, murmurs ringing loudly and retaining the quiet cacophony of noises. Geniuses were still ushering through the hall's golden gates, and one of those people was none other than a white-haired boy and a golden-haired boy. They were, of course, none other than Ryuk and Quinn. Just like I guessed, they have yet to arrive. Ryuk thought to himself as he looked at the upper row seats of the hall and found none sitting on them. The hall had a strange arrangement, in that it was made in rows upon rows, ascending higher and higher into the air like steps. Somehow, at the ultimate top were a total of exactly 10 chairs, and Ryuk didn't need to be told just who those 10 chairs were made for. A little lower were another row and then another row up until about 70 rows. The various geniuses were seated around scantily, and Ryuk, along with Quinn, soon made their way forward. Somehow, they ended up finding themselves at the last row in the hall. The row was on the highest steps, and somehow it was more elevated and enabled one to see more of the entire hall, as if one was looking at it from above. At the center of the hall was a pretty large podium where a total of 3 seats could be seen. Right now, there was none on those seats, the same for the top 10 seats at the front. Arriving at the last row seats, Ryuk sat down, Quinn sitting beside him a moment later. Ryuk looked at the various students murmuring down below before he turned to look at Quinn, who was smirking at him. Pressured? Quinn asked in a loud tone as Ryuk's dulled eyes took his gaze away from him. Don't sweat it, Ryuk. The offer to work as a personal manager for me is always open, Quinn said as Ryuk threw his head back on the reclining seat. Taking a deep breath in and opening his lips, a cold breath of air escaped, and quietly, he dove into himself, shutting off the outside world and instead directing his attention to the top of the podium. The pressure Ryuk felt right now was almost crippling, and the only way he felt in control was simply by focusing his attention on what was important. It wasn't the 10 ultimate geniuses that the various other geniuses had come to see, but the announcement that the instructors would come to make. Here they are. Ryuk, the ultimate 10. Quinn suddenly called out in a hushed tone as Ryuk felt the noise and murmurs slowly disappear, replaced by hushed remarks. Yet still, he refused to open his eyes. I don't care. No, I don't want to care. I just want to hear the announcement, Ryuk said to himself, his eyes still shut close and never moving an inch from his reclining position. But none noticed, not even Quinn himself, as they all had their attention on the 10 individuals who immediately moved to the front row and began taking their seats. Instantly, the murmurs were shut down, and hushed whispers grew. Right now, Quinn had puppy eyes, the same for the remaining students. Can you believe it, Ryuk? Being in the same room with the 10 ultimate geniuses in flesh. Quinn let out like a puppy, but on receiving no reply, he couldn't help but divert his attention. Ryuk? He called as he looked at Ryuk, who was still in the same reclining position. Ryuk? He called once more as Ryuk finally opened his eyes. They're here, Quinn, Ryuk said. Of course they're here. Look at them on the front row. Quinn called out as Ryuk turned his gaze up. Quinn followed after his gaze to stare at the top of the podium, where a total of 3 individuals were currently sitting. The instructors are already here, Quinn called out aloud, awakening everyone as they all turned their attention to the podium. Instantly, the entire hall was reduced to absolute silence. One of the instructors rose up as he stood at the edge of the podium. His gaze scanned everyone before loudly exhaling, cold air escaping his lips. How disappointing! How disappointing! How disappointing! How disappointing! The voice echoed throughout the hall, ringing loudly in every genius's heart and shocking them into a stupor. The instructor was none other than a man close to 2 meters in height, with long golden hair that fell down his shoulders. Dressed in a normal white shirt and trousers, he wore an haori on top of his white shirt, adorned with golden runes. The man's eyes were like golden suns, burning brightly. A mix of clear disgust and disdain evident on his face as he stared at the geniuses. It has come to my hearing that some of you think this challenge is pointless. The existence of a group you all named the Ultima 10 is enough to drown any vestige of hope left in you in its passing, isn't it? Right now, I see the disgusting looks of resignation on your faces, and I have heard well of your lack of dedication in training. You all think the 10 are untouchable, don't you? That their lineage, their abilities, their dominance make them insurmountable. He paused after that, allowing a flicker of disdain to flash deeper across his face. Let me remind you trash of something. Bloodline does not guarantee survival. Power doesn't guarantee victory. Complacency, however, guarantees failure. The Ultima 10 earned their place not because of who they are, but because they refused to accept limits. Those who refuse to accept this simple truth will be doomed to a life of nothing but failure. Since it has come to my hearing that most of you have simply sat down and accepted fate, I feel it is no longer worth it for the various instructors to pay you any more attention. For that reason, I hereby, right now and right here, declare that the test begins now. Right now, the man declared loudly. Gasps rippled through the assembly, whispers breaking out among the students. Even Ryuk couldn't help but feel a pang in his chest. But the pang was quick to settle, as he had somehow expected such a situation to arise. To be honest, he wasn't that surprised. The loud murmur grew louder and louder, until it became something like a mini protest. Slowly, one of the instructors behind the golden-haired man rose up and raised her hand, and then she clenched it to a fist. Instantly, the entire arena quieted down, as every genius who was murmuring grabbed hard at their throats, their eyes bulging red with veins. Ryuk's eyes narrowed as he saw the geniuses gnawing at their own throats like people who had suddenly had oxygen hijacked from their lungs. Then he watched as each of the geniuses paused in their motions. The same moment the lady slowly raised, relaxed her hands. She locked away their voices? Ryuk thought in shock as a notification suddenly flashed before his eyes. Warning! An incredibly dangerous entity is present within host's vicinity. Host is advised to exercise caution. Fallen family trashes, listen closely. The golden-haired man continued, and this time none of the geniuses said a single word. They had all seen their own lives flash easily before their eyes. If the woman could stop all their voices, it would only cause her a slight sweat to end their lives too. Somehow, the woman herself was standing respectfully behind the man. It was enough for them to see that their pride here amounted to nothing. Such a brutal reality was enough to silence each of them and command their absolute attention. What I am about to say will mark a turning point in your lives. Some of you will rise beyond your wildest imagination. Most of you will not. He let the words linger, his sharp gaze sweeping across the crowd. For centuries, the Ascension Academy has been the crucible for greatness among all the races. It is where the worthy are forged, where mediocrity is cast aside, and where those who dare seize destiny are rewarded. This year, 10 seats have been reserved for our family. 10. No more. No less. Immediately, the man slowly raised his hands, golden runes covering all of his fingers. Then something unfurled. Right above the man's hands, a golden ball appeared and then exploded into the sky of the hall. Instantly, a golden vortex appeared in the sky, magnifying forth like a galaxy, growing and hovering above every single genius. Right above your heads lies the Labyrinth of Fallens, an ancient trial crafted by past Fallens. Be aware, this is not a simple test of strength but a revelation of character. It is alive. It will sense your weaknesses, your fears, and your doubts. It will attack not just your body, but your spirit. It will strip you of your apex energy, your confidence, your person, even your will to continue. Out of the 60 of you here, only 40 will emerge. The rest will be eliminated not by choice but by failure. The man slowly stepped closer to the edge of the stage, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it carried across the hall with unnerving clarity. This labyrinth is not a game. It is not a practice run, nor temple run. It is a predator, and you're its prey. You will face traps that consume apex energy. You will fight illusions that strip away your sense of self. Some of you will break, some of you will run, and those who do will be forgotten. The man spoke with a sadistically happy grin on his face. Slowly, he stepped back from the edge of the altar, his voice moving to become sharper and stronger. But to the victors, to those who emerge from the labyrinth, you will be granted a moment of renewal. At the end of the labyrinth lies the Apex Radiance Pool, a reservoir of energy so pure that it can mend even the deepest wounds and reinvigorate the soul itself. For most, it is simply a healing fountain. But to those who are truly exceptional, those with vision and drive, it is more than that. It is a step to future greatness. System quest activated. Main quest. Reach the end of the labyrinth. Rewards unknown. For those of you already trembling at the thought, there is the door. Walk through it now, and you will save yourself the pain and humiliation of failure. For those who stay, know this. The labyrinth will not favor the strong or the talented. It will favor the determined. Prove that you are more than a name. The path forward is brutal, but so is the world beyond these walls. Step forward and claim your place, or step aside and be forgotten. Immediately, the golden vortex above them lit up with brilliant light, as a sigil appeared on it and began flaring brightly. Less than 10 seconds later, a golden archway at the end of the vortex shimmered with life, its intricate designs glowing with pulsing energy. The air thrummed with power, and the labyrinth seemed to echo within them, alive with a quiet, ominous hum. All the various geniuses stood frozen, tension thick in the air. The grand archway seemed so majestic, so powerful, yet so ominous. It radiated an aura that made them feel unworthy to even approach its surface, and at the same time, an energy that instilled fear deep within their hearts. Slowly, they looked at one another for answers, but quickly, a young fallen genius rose from among the top 10 and stepped onto the golden steps, his face devoid of emotion as he disappeared. It was like a motion set in place. All of the top 10 also rose and disappeared down the archway. Quickly, all the students began rising to their feet and disappearing down the hall. Ryuk's hands clenched into fists. He knew well this was his moment. Finally, it was beginning. What had made him unable to sleep well for days. What had been at the forefront of his mind for so long. Finally, it was starting. Immediately, he rose to his feet and stepped forward. The last words he heard were, "May the worthy prevail." Immediately, Ryuk stepped through the golden vortex. All he felt was a sensation that seemed to last less than a tenth of a second. In the next instant, his eyes flashed open, and he looked below him. Right then, Ryuk felt the gaping maw of an abyss right beneath his feet. Right now, he was soaring downward freely into the abyss. Immediately, he forcefully twisted his body as he soared towards the side of abyss. He could barely see a wall, his hands scratching into the surface. Fewurst. Immediately, he felt his fingers' flesh burst, with blood gushing out, but he didn't pay it the slightest attention. In the next instant, his feet crashed into the wall. Sparks of flames flashed through the air as friction erupted between Ryuk's legs and the hard mountainous wall. Instantly, his motion drastically slowed down. Yet, he still surged downward with speed, the light from the friction allowing him to see deeper into the abyss. Quickly, Ryuk's eyes flashed downward, and he saw what lay below. In the next instant, he pushed himself off the wall, diving downward with speed. Roughly, he smashed onto a rocky hard surface, rolling across the ground for 2 meters before he fell deeper for 5 seconds, finally smashing into the ground. But Ryuk didn't wait for a single moment before he instantly faded away from where he was formerly, appearing 10 meters away, both hands raised and prepared for battle. Feeling no motion around him for a minute straight, Ryuk finally settled his beating chest as he looked around him. Just a few meters away, there was a pool of lava. That was what Ryuk had barely seen from the light of his friction and the reason he had hurriedly jumped away in the last seconds. Slowly raising his fingers to his face, Ryuk noticed his flesh had been burned off so much that he could see his bone hands. But of course, it wasn't actually bone but durable white nanorobots. Quickly, he watched as veins began climbing up from his severed flesh, followed by blood and new flesh. In less than a few seconds, his fingers had fully healed. Even if familiar, the possibility of this still amazes me every time. Now, just where am I? Ryuk couldn't help but muse silently as his eyes regulated to the darkness. The red flowing lava finally giving him some light. Right in front of him was a dead end, with lava covering up its edges. Calmly, he turned to his front where he found a long lane of a river of lava. There were barely protruding rocks on some parts of the lava, and the scene before him extended into the far distance beyond Ryuk's gaze. Guess I'll have to move forward for now, Ryuk mused. Instantly, he began moving. He didn't know if there was a time limit to this, but the last thing he would want to happen was to fail at the preliminary stage, and for something as stupid as him being too slow or taking too much time. Immediately, Ryuk raced forward, jumping from one platform to another and erupting forth with speed. The lava seemed to go on forever, but with suspended platforms, Ryuk was able to easily continue moving forward. He had learned to walk on thin ropes with bubbling lava below. It was no problem to move on rocky stones above lava. At least, that was until he was about to jump onto another stone. Suddenly, he came to a stop before shooting backward towards the stone he had previously stepped on. Just a second later, burst, the ground below erupted upward, revealing a gigantic crocodile that lunged after Ryuk's retreating figure with an incredible leap. Still, it was a bit too slow, as Ryuk managed to land on a previous stone. The crocodile, missing its projectile mark, landed back into the lava, sending splashes of lava racing towards Ryuk with terrifying speed. What the hell? The motion of Ryuk's suspiciousness, the stopping and the retreating, the crocodile jumping out of the lava and landing back into it, splashing lava towards Ryuk, took long to describe, yet it happened in a little no more than 3 seconds, shocking Ryuk speechless. His natural instinct wanted him to dodge the tiny lava splashes coming towards him, but Ryuk stopped himself at the last second, standing still and letting the tiny splashes of lava fall on him. He didn't know if the blocks behind him were one such crocodiles too, pretending to be rocks. Sttcchhhhh. A loud sizzling noise was made as Ryuk unconsciously shut his eyes, waiting for the pain of lava falling onto his skin. But it never came. When he opened his eyes, he saw the splashing lava encased in a white-blue ice ball before Tei all fell back into the lava, accompanied by a sizzling noise. SSSSSSSSSSSS. A faint hiss resounded around Ryuk as he felt the soft skin wrapped around his neck. The figure was none other than a snow-white python with flickering blue eyes. Thanks for that, Isha. Ryuk thanked as he focused his attention around him. Right now, all the remaining platforms on the lava that Ryuk could use to keep moving forward suddenly began moving up and down, circling around him. Soon, dark pitch-black eyes peeked from underneath the lava. All the suspended platforms before him were actually lava crocodiles. A total of 10. This would have been difficult if I hadn't reached the perfection stage. Ryuk mused silently, and without wasting any more seconds, his hand stretched out as he whispered, "Activate Frost Veil." Instantly, powerful mist began spewing out from underneath Ryuk's feet, and then the air around him began getting colder and colder, the temperature dropping increasingly. Before the crocodiles could decide to attack their prey, the lava, which was their territory and their ace for the battle, was instantly reduced to solid blocks. The change in temperature was unlike anything the creatures had ever witnessed, and immediately, they backed up with speed. A moment of hesitation. That was when Ryuk moved. Barong, barong, barong. The heavy sound was that of Ryuk heavily stomping onto the eyeballs of the closer crocodiles. The momentum of the kick was enough to make brain matter gush out of the crocodile's gigantic maw, instantly blowing out any vestige of life around them. Without wasting any more seconds, Ryuk's punches erupted with power, splashes of lava and ice flying around the area. He cracked down on each crocodile with horrific speed, a punch to their eyes enough to rupture their brains. Ryuk had been able to easily see how thick their crocodile hides were, and he instantly shifted his attention to their eyes, which seemed like the only weak spot worth targeting. And giving it a try, the eyes were truly where their weakness lay. In less than 30 seconds, the place had once more been reduced to silence. The ice and mist slowly cleared away, revealing Ryuk standing alone with the white python curled lazily around his neck and the levitating bodies of lava crocodiles floating on the lava, obviously deader than dead. "Worth an exercise," Ryuk said as he resumed his running. With the crocodiles mostly dead, he was able to continue his path without much trouble, and soon he appeared at the end of the place. A dead end? Ryuk wondered as he looked at the pitch-dark walls in front of him. But quickly, he noticed something as Isha automatically disappeared from his neck, having been sent back into his pet world. After Isha's disappearance, Ryuk walked towards the dead end and found glowing runes of various handwritten symbols all over the walls. Slowly stretching his fingers out, his hand paused an inch from the lettering before he touched them. They were cold to the touch, and the instant he made contact, the gentle blue light the walls were radiating instantly changed into pitch-black runes. The letters quickly realigned themselves, coming together like a formation, forming a new set of runes. The transformation had been incredibly quick, taking less than a few seconds, and Ryuk instinctively pulled back his hand while stepping back. He then asked in his mind, "Hey system, can you translate what these runic symbols are saying?" His thoughts were interrupted as an overwhelming aura surged out from the runes. The ominous wall collapsed, revealing a vortex. Immediately, the ground beneath Ryuk fractured as he shot back with speed. Yet he's still too slow, as 3 long fingers easily wrapped around his side and caught him from behind, instantly dragging him into the runic lines. The vortex immediately closed after Ryuk's disappearance, the runes returning to the wall and glowing a soft blue, almost as if nothing had ever happened. The world around him twisted rapidly, making it impossible for Ryuk to make sense of his surroundings. It was like thousands of notes of information were being passed into his head. So much so that he felt as though he understood everything all at once. Then new information would come in, making him forget all he had previously learned. The cycle continued over and over. The information overload gripped his head so powerfully it felt like his brain would explode. Blood slipped out from the side of his nose and lips as he tried his best to focus on a single thing from the torrent of information flooding his mind. Magnifying it endlessly, only then did the rest of the information fade away. Instantly, Ryuk's eyes snapped open as he felt the ground solidify beneath his feet. But looking around, Ryuk's jaw dropped, and his mind nearly froze. Right now, he was in a throne room. No, more of a throne's room, as there were 2 thrones, and 2 people sat upon them. I don't understand. Welcome, the weakest of us. Who? What? An illusion? Various conjectures came into Ryuk's head as he looked at the scene before him, trying to make sense of it all, yet failing to do so. Right now, before Ryuk was another set of Ryuk himself. Yes, the people sitting on the thrones were exactly like Ryuk himself. Even though they had exceptional differences, they were still no different from him. The person on the right throne was a Ryuk, but with long blue hair cascading down his head and pouring down to his lap. On the side of his face were glassy blue scales, and instead of hands, he had gigantic claws also covered in glassy blue scales, clenching the handle of his seat. One of the claws rested lazily against the gigantic throne's armrest, and tapping rhythmically. His blue eyes were like an entire galaxy staring at Ryuk with a light that Ryuk couldn't quite make out. Was the Ryuk before him looking at him in disdain, pity, or curiosity? Ryuk couldn't absolutely tell at all. On the other hand, the Ryuk sitting on the left throne was an absolute monstrosity, completely different from the other Ryuk. For one, he was oozing with an unbelievable amount of dark energy that shook the heart of Ryuk. The pressure rolling off him was absolutely crushing. He had snowy white hair, just like Ryuk's, but dark scales covered half of his face, twisting him into a malevolent form, yet with an otherworldly beauty. His lips were cherry red, but they exposed sharp fangs that reminded Ryuk of Duke, the lion himself. One of his legs was crossed over the other, and his head rested beneath his chin, looking at Ryuk with an amused yet undoubtedly condescending gaze. "Welcome, the weakest of us." His voice boomed through the area, sounding like an extremely loud roar that shook Ryuk to his bones, forcing him to unconsciously take steps back from fear. It was an unexplained fear. Even though the person before him seemed no different from him, he was like a separate entity of his own, an absolute fiend, with such a spine-chilling malevolent aura. Am I supposed to fight these absolute monstrosities to pass this phase of the test? Ryuk wondered as sweat unconsciously poured down his face. Yet, in the next instant, his body firmed up, and a cold aura began seeping out of him as he got into a battle stance. His stance seemed to shock the two Ryuks on the throne as they looked at his battle position. Slowly, the Dark Ryuk removed his hand from his jaw and placed his legs upright, his body leaning forward. "How interesting," he said, as Ryuk felt a deep crimson light flash from the Dark Ryuk's gaze. Slowly, the Dark Ryuk rose to his feet and began stepping down from his throne. Immediately, as the Dark Ryuk began stepping down, Ryuk felt as if the weight of the entire world was sinking down onto him. Step, step, step. Every step down the throne sent shockwaves rippling through Ryuk's chest as he unconsciously swallowed. His clothes became absolutely drenched in sweat. Pressure. Monumental pressure. That was what Ryuk was facing now. Without haste, and with the same malevolent smirk, the Dark Ryuk finally reached meters away from Ryuk. Yet, even though they were both the same height, Ryuk felt an insignificance. It was like he was nothing before the person before him, unworthy to even be in his presence. He tried fighting, but he was unable to muster any motion. Unknowingly, Ryuk began panting hard, his heart beating loud and fast, his body entering a state of exhaustion, like a body exposed to something beyond its control. "You want to fight me, weakest one?" the Dark Ryuk asked with the same malevolent grin as he slowly stretched out his right hand. Instantly, Ryuk shifted to the side, wanting to avoid the clawed hand from grasping him. But he was shocked speechless when he felt the hand gently grasp on his shoulder. The entire ground beneath Ryuk's feet caved in and shattered into pieces, forming a weird dark vortex that seemed to devour all the light around him. Looking beneath his feet, Ryuk's jaw dropped to the ground. Somehow, the ground had shattered into absolute pieces, leaving nothing but a black hole beneath him. Now he was mere inches from being dropped into the black hole, saved only by the hand grasping onto his shoulder and dangling his feet in the air. "Below you, weakest one, is a black hole. It isn't from some skill or whatever. No, it is from the simple motion of me grabbing your shoulder. The force of that is enough to completely rupture the space beneath you, tearing it apart. Even when the space repairs itself, it gets destroyed an infinite number of times until eventually, it loses its strength, and a black hole spirals forth from the weakness of the space. Now, do you understand, Ryuk, the difference between us?" the figure asked with a malevolent chuckle, as Ryuk's eyes almost lost their light while he stared at the black hole beneath his feet. He wanted to scream it was a lie, but the existence of the black hole below him was more than enough proof. Besides, why would the person before him even bother lying? Does it amuse both of your baseless egos to revel in nothing which you call power? A voice suddenly whispered out from behind both Ryuk and the Dark Ryuk, causing them to unconsciously turn their gazes toward the blue-scaled Ryuk sitting on the throne, the same indifferent and distant gaze on his face. "It disgusts me, both of your ignorance. It irks my soul and stokes my pity," the figure said as he lazily rose from his throne. In the next instant, Ryuk witnessed the world flash, and then everything went blank in his head. Thump, thump. Lazily, Ryuk landed on his knees when he felt the hand grasping him fade away, and the black hole beneath him closed up. The person before him was no longer the Dark Ryuk, but actually the blue-scaled Ryuk, looking down at him, not with pity or disdain, but with the same indifferent expression. Unconsciously, Ryuk turned his gaze to the side. There, he found the dark Ryuk lodged into the wall, cracks around him, and some parts of his scales dripping with dark blood, as his head drooped lifelessly down. What the hell just happened? The dark Ryuk, whose simple force of grabbing Ryuk's shoulder had been enough to crack open a black hole into the depths of space, was now lodged into the wall. Blood rained down the side of his scaled, dark face, and standing before Ryuk was now the blue Ryuk, whose right hand was still held in the air in a motion resembling one swatting away a fly. Did Ryuk need to be told who had done that? Somehow, he found it hard to believe. He had not seen at all what had happened, any motion of it at all. It was as if he had been paused in time, missing the collision and only opening his eyes to see the end result. Slowly, the blue-scaled Ryuk crouched to the ground, his eyes fixed on Ryuk's, most especially Ryuk's left blue eye. Only now did Ryuk notice. Somehow, his left blue eye looked no different from the eye right before him, and the same could be said for his crimson eye, which seemed no different from the eye of the dark-scaled Ryuk. It was as if he himself was a mixture of... Ah! A mist of air escaped the ice-scaled blue Ryuk's lips as he slowly shifted his gaze away from Ryuk's blue eye. Then, he rose unervingly before turning his back on Ryuk. In the next instant, Ryuk found him sitting on a throne. Once more, it was as if time had absolutely stopped, and Ryuk had somehow missed the motion of his walk again. As much as I hate to believe it, you truly have the same royal blood running within me, and the same accursed blood of that bastard running through you at the same time. How ridiculing of our royal blood! The blue-scaled lamented. Ryuk found it incomprehensible to understand, yet he couldn't help but feel like he was about to grasp something that would forever change his life. Tell me, who are you? Ryuk asked, his voice ringing through the silence of the throne room as the blue-scaled Ryuk slowly settled back into his chair, reclining deeply before closing his eyes. This meeting between us, young one, it is one that has been forced. It isn't time for us to meet yet. You're still too weak. Too weak. Leave, the blue-scaled Ryuk said in a deep tone, and like a primordial law, Ryuk watched as the space around him cracked up. Immediately, the terrifying suction force, this one even greater than the previous one. Wait! Ryuk shouted as he tried to free himself from the confines of the force, but all he last saw was the same indifferent expression of the blue-scaled Ryuk as the gaping maw appeared, and in the next instant, he disappeared from the room. Once more the fierce twisting and turning began, as if he was in a tumbling car caught in a fatal bridge accident. But as quickly as it came, it disappeared just as fast too. When he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in the starry depths of space. Suddenly, a notification appeared before his gaze. Congratulations! Host has completed the mission. Arrive at the end of the labyrinth. The system suddenly announced as Ryuk stood numbly in the starry depths of space. Right before him was a falling waterfall of a strange and bizarre blue energy, reminiscent of the rejuvenating pool back in the classes, except about 100 times purer. However, even though his gaze was locked on it, Ryuk paid it no attention at all. Right now, he was lost in the world of the conversation he had just experienced. An illusion? No, it can't be. That was real. I can feel it in the depth of my soul. But how? How? Ryuk muttered like a madman and quickly called on the system. Hey, system, can you explain to me what happened? Who are those two Ryuks? Ryuk immediately asked, but the system's reply surprised him. Host had been able to avoid the butchering of the lava crocodilus, kill them, and reach the mountainous wall, after which Host was transported here. Does Host have problems remembering that? The system asked as Ryuk looked dumbly at the panel. I touched the wall, but I wasn't transported here immediately. I was brought to this room, where there's this dark Ryuk and this blue-scaled Ryuk. There was an... Ryuk hurriedly explained in disbelief, but soon stopped himself as the system's notification flashed again. The system has no idea what the host is implying. Perhaps Host might have suffered a minor wound to the head during the previous battle? Or maybe a side effect of being in this place is faint hallucinations. The system replied, and slowly Ryuk's eyes dulled. I was the only one who saw that. The system can't see it. He realized and threw the scene to the back of his mind. Right now, there was an even more important task. He had successfully arrived at the end of the labyrinth, which meant he had passed the test. Now was his time to reap the benefits of passing the test. And no, it wasn't the system quest, it was the fallen pool itself. Immediately, Ryuk sped forward, feeling his body move even though there was nothing but the vast emptiness of space beneath him. In no time, he reached the falling waterfall of energy. Instantly, the system's notification flashed. Congratulations! Host has arrived before an incredibly powerful source of energy, containing a very concentrated amount of source energy. Host can proceed to enter the pool and begin the process of drawing in source energy to fuel Host's body. The system announced, and just as Ryuk had guessed, there was a large amount of source energy within the fallen pool. Immediately, he stepped into the pool, submerging himself and soon dipping deeper into its surface. Commencement of source energy absorption will now begin. Host be warned of monumental pain during the potential evolution of Host's nanobody. Evolution? Ryuk asked as his shut eyes instantly snapped open in the next instant. Process will now commence. Arg! Ryuk's body was anything but normal. It was an abnormal component, a combination of technology and nanobody. But it wasn't just any nanobody, it was a nanobody capable of instant regeneration and one that could cause the growth of true flesh over itself. Ryuk's heart sped up this growth as the nanobody created veins, tissues, and blood that coursed through Ryuk's body, its source none other than his beating heart. If a shallow cut was made on Ryuk, blood would pour out, making anyone believe he was made of flesh. However, if one completely severed a body part, they would see the machine part underneath, leaving them stunned and in disbelief. Ryuk didn't think his body was anything special, or at least, that was until he saw its inhuman regeneration and, ultimately, its ability to absorb an energy known as source energy from the rejuvenating pool. Ever since then, Ryuk had been fascinated with his own body. Just what were its further capabilities? Right now, however, he could see a message from the system flashing with a red light. Possible evolution state is being accessed. Host must prepare. Though shocking, Ryuk did one last thing before the evolution began, and in the next instant, a python appeared in the apex pool. Of course, it was none other than Isha. Ryuk had been able to sense that the pool was no ordinary rejuvenating bath. Somehow, the source energy present should also be available to the fallen geniuses, even if it didn't increase their strength right away like it did for Ryuk. It should be able to store in their body and increase their future potential and talent. This pool, in a sense, was a talent-enhancing pool. Now it made more sense why the man had said for some geniuses, it would be more than just a simple rejuvenating pool. An interesting idea occurred to Ryuk once he entered the pool and sensed the abundant source energy. Why not summon Isha to the pool to further increase Isha's talent? It wasn't mentioned that only the fallen genius could use it, right? And Ryuk himself was human and could use it. So who's to say the pool would have no effect on Isha? Immediately, Isha appeared in the pool. It stared mysteriously at the liquid around it, but its eyes soon shone with light as it began circling around with speed. Quickly, runic lines began making their way up Isha's body as a small whirlpool appeared around it, with the energy being quickly absorbed into its body. The python's excitement increased as it felt itself being given the best nourishment of its life. But soon, its eyes narrowed as it looked around and found Ryuk nowhere. Immediately, it dropped its head and tried to see if Ryuk was beneath the waves. There, it could see Ryuk swimming farther down. The python looked at Ryuk for a while, and when it sensed no signs of distress from him, it decided to leave Ryuk be and focus on getting as much nourishment as possible from the rejuvenating pool. Unknowing to Isha, right now, Ryuk himself was going through the most devastating experience of his life. The pain of every single cell in his body crashing apart and exposing itself one by one was excruciating. So much source energy was entering Ryuk's body that his nanobody began breaking apart. Ryuk watched in horror as strange cracks emerged all over his flesh. Quickly, his skin wrinkled and folded, turning into nothing but ashes. The phenomenon started from Ryuk's right arm and quickly began spreading until there was eventually nothing but a white, robotic-looking humanoid at the deepest depth of the pool. Somehow, Ryuk's body had gotten incredibly heavy, sinking him farther and farther down the pool. Eventually, he landed on the soft, sandy ground of the pool, the only sounds he could hear being machines whirring and turning. Hot steam and dirty oil-like liquid dripped out of Ryuk's body, getting absorbed into the ground. Holes began appearing around Ryuk's nanobody in the apex pool. Previously, the source energy from the rejuvenation bath had only entered him through his mouth and pores. But this time, his own nanobody cast away his flesh and instead opened up specialized holes in its parts, directly suctioning the apex pool. The more liquid from the apex pool that entered Ryuk's body, the more dark, oil-like liquid was flushed out. After an hour of the oil seeping out, it stopped, and then his nanobody itself began breaking apart. Ryuk's humanoid shape never changed, but he could feel plates of technological material forming onto him. Tiny pieces of nanobody components rearranged themselves endlessly. Slowly, Ryuk's hand and limbs began lengthening, his nanomusculature gaining a rounded, enhanced shape and perfectly replicating a humanoid body. Accompanying Ryuk, however, wasn't marvel or awe, but pain. It was like being sliced into 1,000 pieces and having ants walk over a person's naked bones while alive. Somehow, he wanted to scratch and rip apart his own body, but he couldn't move a single muscle. The control of his nanobody had been hijacked. The feeling of owning a body at all had completely disappeared, replaced with helplessness and grinding teeth, with his eyes bulging and stinging, veins writhing in red like worms beneath them. Red notifications flashed at the corner of Ryuk's gaze, but the pain wouldn't let him look down and read them. The text on the notifications was changing so fast that, even if he wasn't in agony, he wouldn't grasp it. Strange, weird codes and the word error were the most prominent things Ryuk could see. Even though he had no idea what his own nanobody was doing, one thing Ryuk felt through his entire state was that something was changing. It was creation. The creation of a new form of body. So this is evolution. Ryuk wondered, another set of notifications flashing before his gaze. But he was unable to see them. Eventually, his consciousness darkened, and he saw nothing more. Where am I? That was the first thought that occurred to Ryuk as he looked around the area before him while slowly rising to his feet. The world before him was like an endless white expanse of glass, extending as far as the eyes could see into the far distance. Looking at his feet, he could see he was in his human body, although but naked, and below his feet were continuously rippling waves, almost as if he was standing above water. Bloody mutt! The voice suddenly called out, and all of Ryuk's motion instantly came to an absolute freeze. His eyes bulged to their absolute limit as he stood there, the simple call resonating thousands of times through his body and sending acute shock ripples through him. Slowly turning his head behind him, Ryuk found a lone figure standing just a few meters away, his body held upright by the dark, familiar staff that Ryuk had known. Uncle Bob. Ryuk's body was so much in disbelief as he unconsciously sprinted forward towards Uncle Bob, flinging himself into that warm embrace once more. Tears unconsciously streamed down his face. It was true, the warmth that enveloped him. It was undoubtedly Uncle Bob himself. But somehow, he couldn't help but feel more intense sadness. Good thing I created this holographic projection to at least be solid. To give you one last hug, Uncle Bob whispered as Ryuk stood in his embrace for as long as he could before slowly backing up. Uncle Bob? How? Wait, one last hug? What do you mean? A flurry of questions came from Ryuk, finding himself failing spectacularly to form his words as he watched Uncle Bob stand upright, his face cloaking a melancholy which soon changed to become serious once more. I have lied to you, Ryuk. Everything you have known about yourself is nothing but a lie. The entire existence you have lived up until now is itself nothing but a lie. Even right now, my existence is nothing but a lie. This world you see, this me, it's nothing but a projected past holographic form that I created to be activated on the day your nanobody undergoes its first evolution. A holograph? Ryuk mused, feeling slight apprehension. Could everything around him truly be a false reality? I am not very well aware of how much you know, but now you should at least be able to tell your body is anything but normal or human. In fact, this body of yours, I have built it for you because the ones you had were taken from you long, long ago, Uncle Bob said as the holographic space before him changed, and suddenly an image appeared in front of both Ryuk and Uncle Bob. The image was that of an object wrapped in a piece of crimson cloth. Slowly, the cloth unfurled, and unconsciously Ryuk took 2 steps backward, his heart pumping in fear. The object was the most chilling and unsettling thing he had ever seen. A simple heart, conjoined with some tiny pieces of veins, and a long line of something that looked like lungs, attached to a piece of bubbling white tiny brain. That was all. It was immediately clear to Ryuk that this was no doubt a baby, and the crimson cloth was definitely white, but having been soaked in so much blood, it had gradually turned the cloth into a crimson color. This is how you were passed into my arms. Ryuk, you had nothing but a brain, a lung, and a heart, Uncle Bob said as Ryuk unconsciously collapsed on both knees, the sound of heavy breaths rippling through the entire space. Was it fear, was it disgust, or anger that made his heart almost spiral out of his control? Ryuk had no idea. You would have died if you were left in this state forever. Ryuk, your chances of lasting in this state for more than a few years were nil. For that reason, I decided to build you a new body. The only thought that I felt could replace your body was the technology one found on the Aboriginal planet. A few pieces of my own body parts and functions combined with nanotechnology, and your special nanobody came into existence. You might hate me for the lie that I have given you all your life, but I am very well aware that one day you will come to realize it was a choice made from absolutely no option, Uncle Bob said, melancholy. If that was who I truly was when I was passed to you, then I forgive you for all of the lies, Uncle Bob. His voice rang through the space as Uncle Bob turned to look at him before a small smile appeared on his face. I sometimes forget I was the one who raised you, and in that Aboriginal planet too. There's mercy in your eyes, something missing from where we came from, Uncle Bob said, and Ryuk's ears perked up. Where we came from? What is that? Could it not be Grade E? Could it not be End-Earth? More importantly, how did I get into that state as a baby? Was that how I was naturally born? A flurry of questions immediately came out of Ryuk's mouth, derailing his bearing as Uncle Bob shook his head. Everything, Ryuk. You will find your answers soon enough. I am afraid if I give you anything more than that, then they will track you down, and all of the efforts would have been for naught. Instead, let us focus on why you're here. I wish to explain to you the complexity of your nanobody. It will accompany you very much in your journey, and I think I need you to understand a thing or two important things about it, Uncle Bob said seriously, and immediately, Ryuk watched as the holographic space changed, replaced by Ryuk's own body, which began dismantling and then overlapping again and again. Your nanobody, Ryuk? Your nanobody, Ryuk, was built by me, using the template of an ancient celestial race known as the Anunnaki. Uncle Bob began, as Ryuk listened silently. I had just saved you from that war on the orders of your mother. While rushing through various worlds, I was deeply attracted to this one, End-Earth. Not only because it is undergoing an apex awakening fusion, but also because of a peculiar energy wave I noticed rippling out from the bottom of it. That wave contained so much power that I believed it would be worth stopping to investigate. Eventually, I made up my mind to settle on this world. I tracked down the waves after our settlement into End-Earth and discovered an Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are a race that, even to us, are said to be extinct. An incredibly powerful, ancient race known for turning their bodies into experiments for technological abilities. They are a scholastic race who chase the power of supremacy using technology. Uncle Bob paused, then continued. Remember, Ryuk, below End-Earth, there lies the corpse of an Anunnaki. I copied the model of your body exactly based on this corpse, and after much struggle against the Anunnaki aura, I managed to chip away some pieces of its own technology. Combined with some technological parts one found on Grade E, I managed to build your body based on the Anunnaki's own body model. So your body path isn't human at all. If anything, it is more based on the body of the Anunnaki. That was who I copied, Uncle Bob explained, as Ryuk nodded. He had somehow been exposed to the possibility of not being human, and now hearing his nanobody was built on the design of an ancient race didn't sound so surprising. The advantage of copying the design of an Anunnaki and fusing some of its scales into you is the ability for you to control some of the skills the Anunnaki could control. Your heart and brain, however, will not be able to cope with the full power of an Anunnaki. For that reason, I decided to make your nanobody an evolutionary organ, to avoid overwhelming your life form. Your nanobody evolves after absorbing a sufficient amount of energy known as source energy. Why source energy and not apex energy, you may ask? That is because I have noticed that, for some reason, the Anunnaki's energy wasn't apex energy but source energy. Somehow, I deduced that if the Anunnaki, a race obsessed with technological artifacts, designed their power to grow from absorbing source energy instead of the commonly known apex energy, then it wouldn't hurt if I followed their model to allow you to awaken their abilities in the future. Besides, if I made your nanobody evolve from apex energy, eventually your nanobody would grow very fast, and your heart and brain wouldn't be able to cope with the stress. In the end, it might lead to it exploding and ending your life. That is why I went with an energy that is much rarer in this world, source energy. Truly, it is much harder to find unless one encounters a fortuitous event. Your apex energy will grow your heart and brain, making them capable of processing more, while your nanobody accesses the rarer source energy. When you eventually evolve, you won't be overwhelmed, and you will be capable of completing the evolution. Right now, you are undergoing your first evolution. After you successfully progress through it, you will awaken the first skills of an Anunnaki, the ones most compatible with you. And know this well. This is not the last evolution, only the first. Your body holds many powers that even I am not aware of. In fact, I barely have any idea of its capabilities. Uncle Bob's voice softened. But know this, even though you might have been made from nanobots, that doesn't mean you are incapable of progressing through normal apex cultivation. So long as one has a brain and a beating heart to pump apex energy and access their primordial gate, they should be fine. And you, Ryuk, possess these two things. To allow your blood to flow freely and not make you lose your bloodline, I have harvested some cores of my own cultivation veins and conjoined them with your heart and lungs. They are capable of regeneration and should allow you to cultivate and pass energy through your whole body with no problem, while also ensuring your bloodline and heart survive. Was that why you died to the null? Were you normally stronger? Ryuk couldn't help but ask. Now he knew where he had obtained his veins and blood vessels. All of the things he possessed were actually Uncle Bob's own. Perhaps that was why Uncle Bob had died to the null. Perhaps that was why he was so weak in death. I was normally stronger than I used to be, and truly, I lost 90% of my power when I passed you my own cultivation veins. But dying? My heart and will had already died long ago. Your existence was what made me keep going at all. Without you, perhaps, I would never have been able to witness the joy of creating someone younger than oneself, or raising a child you may call, Uncle Bob said. Somehow, that couldn't erase the heavy indebtedness Ryuk felt. Your nanobody, Ryuk, even though capable of the power of an extinct ancient technological race, has its own shortcomings. Your nanobody is not absolutely invincible, and that is what I am here to warn you about. Know one thing, Ryuk. While your body can regenerate, part of that regeneration power comes from the energy of the scales harvested from the Anunnaki, and that energy is finite. While the evolution of the nanobody vastly increases the power of your regeneration, you are able to access the scales of the Anunnaki model that I planted in your form from the Anunnaki's corpse. That energy is finite, Uncle Bob explained. If you're reckless to the point of excess, you will expend the energy of your regeneration. And I am afraid after that, Ryuk, your nanobody will cease to exist. It will never be able to be put back, no matter how hard you try. Somehow, You can say that your nanobody doesn't survive on your beating heart but on the energy scales of the Anunnaki model within you. These have their own advantages. Somehow, even if your legs and arms are slashed off, as long as you have your heart beating and your brain functioning, you can always continue to live, Ryuk. When faced with an impossible enemy, you can always abandon your arms and legs and run. In fact, if you want to live, Ryuk, you only need to make sure your heart and brain keep working. Those are the only two parts of your body that you truly need. You need not worry about injuries to any other parts of your body whatsoever. Eyes? Liver? Kidneys? A stab to the stomach? All of these injuries are nothing at all. While a scanner will show you have a stomach, kidneys, and liver, all of these things are nothing but projections. You don't really have them, so injuries to these parts aren't fatal at all because they don't truly exist. But injuries to your heart, lungs, or brain are what can really end you, Uncle Bob said, this time extremely seriously, and Ryuk couldn't help but unconsciously move his hands to his beating heart. Now he knew well of the parts that were functioning within him. His heart, brain, and lungs. Somehow, everything else was a lie? This was something Ryuk could have bet his life on and argued to death that it was a lie. Yet right now, he had no idea how to feel about these truths. The nanobody is the greatest creation of mine, and its capabilities are close to endless. But still, Ryuk, always remember that the nanobody is not your true body. Tell me, Uncle Bob, who took my body away from me? Ryuk asked, feeling seething anger. Your own people, Uncle Bob said, as Ryuk stood there, not knowing how to feel. His own people took his body away from him? Just how does that make any sense? But it isn't just your body they took away, Ryuk. They took something far, far more important to you than that. Tell me, Uncle Bob, where do I find them? Find them, Uncle Bob said with a small chuckle as he walked towards Ryuk, his hands gently falling onto his shoulders. Don't worry about finding them, Ryuk, because they'll come to find you themselves. And can you guess what they're coming for? Uncle Bob said, this time with a dangerous gaze, as he slowly extended a finger before laying it on Ryuk's forehead. Then, slowly, he trailed it down Ryuk's neck until he stopped at his beating heart. They're coming for what they failed to get their hands on. Your brain, lungs, and heart. They'll be coming to take what else you have left, Uncle Bob said, his face showing zero emotion, as Ryuk unconsciously took steps back in disbelief. You might think they've taken everything away from you, yet still, they are coming to take what else you have left. Remember, Ryuk, the world where you come from, mercy doesn't exist at all. It isn't even a word. They'll come to take what else you have, and they won't rest until they have it. That is why you too cannot afford to rest at all. The stronger you grow, the easier it will be for them to track you. And if you stop growing for a second, you increase your chance of death as they'll eventually find you anyway. Taking away what you have then would be even easier. If you want to keep what you have, Ryuk, or want any hope of taking back all that they took away from you, for verily you can take back all of your body parts that were stolen, then you have to grow faster than they can imagine for someone with just 3 body parts. Faster than they can comprehend. What you need to do is beat their expectations. Grow beyond what they thought was possible. That is your only chance. Ryuk? Uncle Bob said, and Ryuk noticed the glass world around him begin cracking apart. At the same time, Uncle Bob noticed it as he slowly backed up from Ryuk. It seems your evolution is close to being complete, and our time is done. I can answer one more question of yours, Ryuk. Ask. Uncle Bob said, and Ryuk watched as his holographic figure began glitching. What to ask? Just where could he even start? There were thousands of questions flashing through his head right now. The system? Were you the one that created it? The question escaped Ryuk's lips the second he asked, shocking not only Uncle Bob but Ryuk himself. That was the last thing he expected himself to ask Uncle Bob. A system, huh? Uncle Bob said with an amused smirk, and that was more than enough answer for Ryuk. I never built that gem. I found it in the most broken part of the universe. It was broken, and I simply fixed it. That was all. I can't create such an artifact. No power in this universe can. Uncle Bob said seriously as he began fading away just like last time. This time, Ryuk didn't know whether to feel sad. He had watched Uncle Bob fade away the last time too. Could he have somehow become used to it? Remember, Ryuk, Uncle Bob said as Ryuk slowly raised his head, finding the man with a smirk on his face. Somehow, it wasn't the smirk of someone about to become non-existent forever. Everything that was taken away from you can all be obtained back.